The alarm was the first thing Dr. Mira Jensen heard when she snapped awake. A shrill, stabbing wail that cut through the recycled air of the habitat. Her heart raced even before her mind caught up with what it meant. Pressure loss. She threw herself out of her sleep bag, boots clattering against the metal floor as red warning lights strobed. The walls of the Mars outpost groaned as the atmosphere bled into the thin, merciless void outside. "Seal the breach, find it," she shouted, her voice muffled inside the helmet she'd tugged on in seconds. The others scrambled, still groggy from rationed sleep but jolted awake by pure terror. Dr. Kiko Yamamoto clutched a tablet, her gloved fingers flying across the cracked screen. "Section C is dropping fastest. I'm rerouting pressure doors." The habitat shuddered. A hiss filled the room, faint but deadly, like a snake waiting to strike. Tom Landry, the team's engineer, cursed under his breath. "It's the storm. Must have thrown debris straight through the greenhouse seal." His eyes flicked toward Mira. "If that module goes, we lose 40% of our oxygen supply." Mira's throat tightened. "Then it doesn't go." They lunged into action, a dance of desperation. Mira, suit still half-sealed, grabbed the emergency patch kit and led the charge down the corridor. Dust still clung to her suit from yesterday's storm walk. Her body ached from exhaustion. But there was no time for pain. Mars was patient but not merciful. They reached the breach. A jagged tear split the greenhouse connector, edges curling inward like the bite of some invisible predator. Plants inside shivered in the thin air, leaves blackening and crumbling in real time. "Sealant," she barked. Tom slapped the polymer patch into her hand. She pressed it against the breach, the gel swelling, hardening as it spread across the wound. Her arms trembled with the effort. The alarm's pitch dropped, the pressure steadying but not rising. "Still leaking," Kiko cried. Again, Mira growled. She pressed another patch, then another, until her hands burned from the cold seeping through the metal. Finally, the hiss faded. The alarm dimmed into silence. Only the rasp of their own breathing remained. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. They just listened to the fragile silence, as though Mars itself might decide to rip the patch away out of spite. Then Tom laughed bitterly. "Well, that was fun. Anyone else want to try not dying before breakfast?" The crew groaned, half relief, half exhaustion. Mira pulled off her helmet, her brown hair damp with sweat. She forced a grin, though her chest still felt like it was full of knives. "Congratulations, everyone. We've survived another 5 minutes." Far above the red planet, unseen by human eyes, another crew was watching. On the bridge of the inevitable victory, Commander Vex Terran sat forward in his chair. His scales glimmered under the ship's blue lights, his 4 arms folded except for one, which tapped a claw against the console. "Replay the moment of breach," he ordered. The massive screen shifted, showing the humans scurrying, patching, fighting. Their movements frantic, chaotic, their chances microscopic. And yet they had won this round. "They should have suffocated," Trill, the science officer, murmured. His compound eyes blinked rapidly in disbelief. "By our models, probability of survival was less than 9%. Lieutenant Zara's purple-scaled tail twitched as she leaned closer to the display. "But they didn't. They never do." Her voice held equal parts frustration and admiration. Commander Vex exhaled slowly, antennae twitching. Humans, fragile in form, irrational in thought, yet impossible to kill. His crew chuckled nervously. They all knew the unspoken name whispered across the Galactic Alliance whenever humans came up. The cockroach principle. Below, the 6-stranded humans regrouped inside their battered habitat. Already they were arguing, no, planning, not despairing, not collapsing, planning. Vex's lips curved into something that almost resembled a smile. "They are going to try to fix it," Zara said softly. "Of course they are," Vex replied. His voice carried a weight of both annoyance and respect. "Because that's what humans do. They turn desperation into something else." Back inside the habitat, Dr. Jensen stood at the center of her team. They were exhausted, oxygen reserves cut in half, food stretched to breaking. And yet their eyes were lit not with surrender, but with fire. "Okay," she said, planting her hands on the table where a schematic was already scratched into the dust. "We survived the breach. Now we make sure we survive tomorrow. Ideas." Kiko lifted a piece of tubing. "If we reroute flow here, we might extend oxygen by 2 days." David Foster, their solar specialist, shook his head. Only if the panels keep working, dust buildup is killing efficiency. We need a way to clean them without wasting oxygen on an EVA. Tom snorted. Sure, maybe we'll invent a self-cleaning array with duct tape and dreams. Sophia Reyes, the doctor, was quietly spraying disinfectant on a strip of cloth. No, not cloth. Mira blinked. Underwear. Sophia raised an eyebrow at the stares. Cotton briefs, surprisingly effective particulate filter. Don't laugh, this might save your lungs. For a heartbeat, silence hung in the air. Then Mira barked a laugh, a wild, desperate sound. All right then, she said. Let's build an atmospheric processor out of rovers, tubing, and underwear. If the universe wants us dead, it's going to have to try harder. Outside, the Martian wind howled, rattling the habitat walls. Above, the alien crew of the inevitable Victory watched with fascination. And deep inside, something none of them wanted to admit stirred: hope. The Martian dawn crept across the barren horizon, painting the sky in muted shades of orange and violet. Inside the battered habitat, Dr. Mira Jensen's team was already awake. No one had truly slept. They were busy tearing apart their own lifeline. Panels of the rover lay in pieces across the floor. Coils of tubing snaked like wounded veins between workstations. The air smelled of metal dust, burnt plastic, and the sharp tang of disinfectant. "Pass me the plasma cutter," Mira said, her voice raw from lack of sleep. Tom Landry grumbled as he handed it over. "You know this is insane, right? Even if we build this thing, we're just extending the inevitable. Maybe 3 days more. Rescue is still over a week away." Mira locked eyes with him through her scratched visor. 3 days is 3 days. That's 3 more days to come up with a better bad idea. "Better bad idea," Tom muttered. "That should be the mission motto." "Shut up and help me," she snapped, sparks flaring as she sliced a panel from the rover's hull. On the far side of the room, Dr. Sophia Reyes carefully sterilized another batch of cotton briefs. She held them up like surgical masks. "It's official. I went to medical school for 8 years just to spend my career disinfecting underwear on Mars." David Foster chuckled from where he knelt among solar array wiring. "Hey, at least yours has a medical purpose. I'm dismantling our comms backup to power this Frankenstein machine. If Earth doesn't hear from us in the next few days, they're going to assume we're already dead." Leo Parker, the communications officer, looked horrified. "You're dismantling what?" David didn't even look up. "Relax, I'll put it back together, probably. Right now, oxygen trumps sending postcards." Leo sputtered but didn't argue. Even he knew the truth. Without air, there would be nothing left to transmit. Kiko Yamamoto hunched over the compressor unit she'd salvaged, muttering equations under her breath. She looked like a woman possessed, sweat dripping onto the tablet balanced on her knees. Mira said without looking up, "Status. I've coaxed the pump from Rover 2 into something resembling functionality. It should generate enough pressure to push air through the underwear filters and into the habitat system. It's not pretty." "Pretty is optional," Mira replied. "Breathable is mandatory." High above, the alien watchers leaned closer to their screens. On the bridge of the inevitable Victory, Trill's compound eyes widened as he watched the humans weld, bolt, and duct tape their strange contraption together. They are building an atmospheric processor out of rovers and undergarments." Lieutenant Zara's purple scales shimmered in disbelief. "This cannot possibly work." Commander Vex Terran rested his chin on one hand, watching intently. "That's the thing, Lieutenant. With humans, the impossible has a tendency to function." Trill tapped his console nervously. "Probability models suggest only a 12.7% chance of success." "Ah," Vex said dryly, "then they are practically guaranteed to succeed." A ripple of laughter broke across the bridge. Even the ship's AI, Cora, let her synthesized voice ring with humor. "Commander, shall I file this as case number 247 and the humans shouldn't be alive, but somehow our series?" "Yes," Vex replied without hesitation. "And make sure to note the underwear filters. I don't want future scholars to think we fabricated that detail." Zara tilted her head. "Do we really intend to let them continue? They are suffering." Vex's antennae twitched. "Alliance protocols are clear. Until their species achieves warp capability, they remain under observation only. We intervene only if extinction looms." Zara's tail swished with frustration. 6 lives may not mean extinction for their species, but look at them. Look at what they are doing. Does that not deserve recognition? Vex didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed fixed on the humans, so small, so fragile, yet burning with a strange fire. Hours passed. The humans worked until their hands cramped and their helmets fogged with sweat. When at last they connected the final tube, the habitat was silent except for the rasp of tired breath. Mira crouched by the jury-rigged machine. It looked absurd, half rover, half plumbing disaster with underwear stretched tight over a metal frame. "Moment of truth," she said, her voice cracked. She threw the switch. The machine sputtered, whined, and groaned like a dying beast. Lights flickered. The pump stuttered, coughed, and then, miraculously, held steady. A low hum filled the habitat. On the readout screen, numbers began to climb. Oxygen levels stabilizing. 53% efficiency, Kiko whispered, staring at the data in disbelief. Sophia whooped. David slumped to the floor, laughing with relief. Even Tom's eternal pessimism faltered. Holy hell, it actually works. Mira leaned her head against the machine, too exhausted to cheer. "Don't thank me yet. This buys us maybe 4 extra days. Rescue is still 11 out." Sophia wiped sweat from her brow. "Then we buy 4 more after that, and 4 more after that." "Until when?" Tom demanded. "Until we run out of duct tape and underwear." "Yes," Mira said fiercely, lifting her head. "Until rescue arrives or until Mars itself gives up trying to kill us." On the inevitable victory, silence reigned as the alien crew watched the numbers steady on the human screens. "They did it," Trill whispered. "They actually did it." Vex sat back, scales rippling in faint amusement. "Of course they did, because that's what they are, survivors, irrational, reckless survivors." He raised one claw, gesturing to the screen. "Remember this moment. It is why the humans will one day matter to the Alliance. They take desperation and they make it victory." Zara's gaze softened as she studied the human leader, Dr. Jensen, standing tall despite exhaustion, her team rallying around her. "They shouldn't be alive," she murmured. "But they are," Vex said. His antennae twitched as a warning alert lit his console. He frowned. "Trill, confirm this. I'm detecting a solar radiation spike inbound toward Mars." Trill's compound eyes darted across his display. "Confirmed, Commander. Estimated impact in 12 minutes. Their habitat shielding will protect them." "And if one of them is outside?" Vex asked grimly. Trill's voice lowered. "Lethal exposure, certain death." All eyes turned back to the screen. Inside the habitat, the humans celebrated their small victory. None of them knew what was racing toward them from the sun. And one of them, Dr. Mira Jensen, was already pulling on her EVA suit. For the first time in days, the Mars habitat was quiet. The oxygen processor hummed, patched together from rovers, tubing, and underwear. The greenhouse was sealed. The radiation storm had passed. The 6 humans sat slumped in their patched suits, drinking recycled water from squeeze packs. Their laughter was weak but real. They had survived again. Mira Jensen leaned against the wall, every muscle aching. She had bruises blossoming across her ribs from the crash landing, but she didn't care. The breach was fixed, the greenhouse saved. Tom shook his head, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "You're insane, boss, absolutely insane." Mira smirked. "Insanity is underrated, especially when it keeps you breathing." The crew chuckled, the tension bleeding away for now. High above, on the inevitable victory, Commander Vex Terran wasn't laughing. His claws tapped the arm of his chair as Trill delivered the latest report. "Commander, atmospheric scans indicate a storm system forming in the Idalia region. Projected path, directly toward the human habitat." Zara's eyes widened. "Another dust storm, how large?" Trill hesitated. "Largest ever recorded, wind velocities exceeding 120 kilometers per hour. Storm front spanning hundreds of kilometers." Silence fell on the bridge. Even Cora's voice was subdued. "Commander, probability of human habitat survival, 36.3%. Probability of life support collapse, 89.2%. Vex's scales darkened. "So after everything they've endured, after clawing their way back from certain death, Mars intends to erase them with a storm." "Nature is indifferent to fairness," Trill observed quietly. Perhaps, Vex muttered, antennae twitching violently, but I am not. Inside the habitat, Leo Parker's voice cracked as he read the data packet from their satellite. Storm incoming, projected arrival in 8 hours. The room went still. How bad? Mira asked. Bad, Leo said. Category 5, the worst since we landed, and it's heading straight for us. Tom cursed under his breath. Our patches won't survive that. The greenhouse connection will be shredded. The processor will be buried. The panels, forget it, will be blind and powerless. David Foster rubbed his face. And without power, we lose everything. Lights, heat, oxygen cycling. Sophia Reyes closed her eyes, exhaustion etched into her features. If that storm hits us full force, we won't last 24 hours. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Mira slammed her palm against the table. Then we fight it, same as we've fought everything else. Tom laughed bitterly. With what duct tape and bad ideas? Yes, Mira snapped. Exactly that. Start dismantling the sleeping quarters. We'll use the interior walls to reinforce the greenhouse. David, get every battery charging now. Kiko, figure out how to angle the panels vertical. Leo, monitor the storm. Sophia, help wherever you can. Tom muttered, we'll be lucky to last half a day. Mira leaned close, her voice low and fierce. Then we'll find a way to make that half a day stretch into 2, and 2 into 3, until rescue arrives or until we are dead. Her crew stared at her, exhausted, terrified, but with a flicker of belief. Move, she barked. Mars isn't going to wait for us to get our act together. The humans scrambled, cannibalizing their own habitat to build defenses. Interior walls were ripped down. Equipment was stripped bare. Every scrap of material was pressed into service. David and Mira wrestled with the solar arrays, tilting them vertical, dust grinding into their suits. This is insane, David grunted. Good, Mira replied. Means it's probably going to work. Inside, Tom and Kiko bolted wall panels across the greenhouse connector, sealing seams with emergency polymer. This won't hold, Tom muttered. Then we make it hold, Kiko snapped, sparks flying from her welder. Sophia dragged crates to reinforce vulnerable corners, her arms trembling with exhaustion. This feels like sandbagging against a hurricane. Leo's voice came over comms, tight with panic. Storm ETA revised 4 hours, not 8. The crew froze. Mira's voice cut through like steel. Then we work faster. On the inevitable victory, the alien crew worked just as feverishly. Cora, Vex demanded, options. The AI paused, calculations flashing across her holographic display. Protocol 47B permits limited intervention for pre-warp civilizations in cases of extinction-level events, provided assistance can be disguised as natural phenomena. Disguised how? Zara asked. Our hull repair nanopolymers, Cora said. If dispersed into the Martian soil, they can form a reinforcement matrix around the habitat. To human sensors, it would appear as unusually compact regolith. Natural. Unexplained, but natural. Trill tilted his head. Deployment probability of success, 71%. Vex's antennae twitched, and degradation. Complete molecular breakdown in 30 days, Cora confirmed. No trace detectable. Zara's tail lashed with excitement. We could save them. We shouldn't save them, Vex growled, though his voice lacked conviction. Trill leaned forward. Commander, if they die here, their space program suffers decades of setback. If they live, they could achieve warp within our lifetimes. Vex studied the humans on the screen. Exhausted, bruised, but still fighting. Still tearing their world apart just to live another hour. They deserve a chance, Zara whispered. Vex closed his eyes. He remembered the countless debates in the Alliance Council, the warnings that humans were reckless, dangerous, unpredictable. But watching them now, he saw something else. Not recklessness, not danger. Defiance. Prepare the nanopolymers, he ordered. On Mars, Mira staggered back inside after the final reinforcement was bolted down. The storm loomed on the horizon, a wall of red swallowing the world. She collapsed onto the floor, helmet clattering beside her. Her chest heaved, every breath a knife. Status, she gasped. Tom glanced at the readings, his face pale. Reinforcements at 60%, power at 70. Oxygen processor dismantled and brought inside, but it won't function until after the storm. Not good enough, Mira whispered. Sophia crouched beside her, squeezing her arm. It's all we've got. Mira stared at the storm outside, her eyes burning. Then it has to be enough. The first winds slammed against the habitat walls. The structure shuddered like a ship in high seas. The storm had come. The storm struck like a living beast. Wind screamed across the Martian plain, hammering the habitat with fists of red dust and razor grit. The structure groaned, metal beams flexing under the onslaught. The lights flickered. A low, terrifying vibration thrummed through the walls. Inside, 6 humans huddled together, waiting for the world to collapse around them. Tom Landry's hands shook as he gripped the console. These wind speeds, we should already be airborne. Kiko hunched over a tablet, eyes darting across schematics. Greenhouse connector still holding for now. Sophia leaned against the wall, medical kit clutched to her chest. If this place cracks, there's nothing I can do for any of you. Mira Jensen stood at the center, legs braced, staring at the readouts. Her voice was hoarse but steady. We've reinforced as much as we can, now we ride it out. A deafening crash shook the habitat. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Leo's voice cracked. Impact detected on the south wall. Everyone froze. They waited for the tearing sound of metal ripping, for the sudden, deadly hiss of atmosphere escaping. It didn't come. Instead, the habitat steadied. What? Tom muttered. That shouldn't have held. Another blast slammed the greenhouse module. Again, the walls groaned but didn't buckle. Kiko blinked at her screen. This doesn't make sense. Soil density readings just spiked outside. It's like the ground is forming a barrier against the wind. Impossible, Tom snapped. Mars doesn't do that. Maybe it just did, Mira said, her voice low. Above, on the inevitable victory, the crew watched with bated breath. The nanopolymers are holding, Trill reported, compound eyes shining with astonishment. Wind deflection at 87% efficiency. The humans are shielded. Zara exhaled sharply, her scales shimmering with relief. They think it's the soil, they don't suspect. Vex Terran sat back in his chair, antennae twitching. His eyes never left the feed of Dr. Jensen standing unbowed in the storm. They don't need to know, he said. Let them believe Mars showed mercy. Commander, Cora chimed, her voice calm and measured, the polymers will degrade in 29 hours. The storm is projected to last 27. Timing is optimal. Vex nodded slowly. Good, then when the winds die, all they'll have left is their own victory. The storm raged for hours. The habitat shook, battered but unbroken. Inside, the humans clung to their makeshift shelter, waiting, enduring. At some point, exhaustion dragged them into uneasy sleep. Only Mira remained awake, eyes fixed on the trembling walls. She whispered to herself, barely audible over the storm's howl. Not today, Mars, not today. When the storm finally eased, 27 hours later, the world outside was unrecognizable. Dunes had shifted, equipment was buried, and the solar panels were caked in thick dust. But the habitat still stood. The 6 humans staggered outside, squinting into the weak light. Red dust coated everything, a suffocating blanket. Tom stared at the greenhouse connector, wide-eyed. By all laws of physics, this should be gone. Kiko crouched, running a gloved hand through the soil. It crumbled like ordinary regolith, but beneath the surface it was denser, almost fused. Strange, she murmured, like the storm compacted it perfectly. Leo gave a shaky laugh. So what, Mars likes us now? Sophia shook her head. Mars doesn't like anyone. Mira looked up at the sky, her eyes narrowing. She'd studied Martian geology for years. She knew this wasn't natural. And yet, what else could it be? Doesn't matter why, she said firmly. We're still alive, that's all that counts. Back inside, David wiped his dust-streaked visor and leaned over the processor. Power at 40%. Arrays are clogged. If we don't clean them, we'll be out of juice in 2 days. Another EVA, Leo groaned. David nodded grimly. 2 of us, minimum. Mira closed her eyes. Every part of her body screamed in protest, but she knew there was no choice. Fine, she said. We go tomorrow. Until then, ration power, lights off, heating minimal. The crew groaned but obeyed. That night, Mira lay awake in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't shake the feeling. The soil, the timely radiation warning, the improbable survival odds stacking in their favor. They were too lucky. Her jaw tightened. Luck was not something she trusted. On the inevitable victory, Zara approached Vex quietly. "She suspects," she said softly. Vex didn't look away from the screen where Mira sat awake among her sleeping crew. "Of course she does. She's human. Pattern recognition is their gift and their curse." "Do you regret it?" Zara asked. Vex's antennae twitched. "No, they earned it. All we did was tilt the scales. The rest was theirs." Trill looked up from his console. "Commander, storm projections complete. The habitat will endure. Rescue mission ETA, 4 days." Vex exhaled slowly, a strange mix of relief and dread filling his chest. Then their story isn't finished yet. The storm had passed, leaving silence in its wake. But silence on Mars was never peace. It was the sound of time running out. Inside the battered habitat, the 6 colonists gathered around the main console. Their faces were pale, lips cracked, eyes hollow. Exhaustion weighed on them like gravity. David Foster tapped the solar readout with a trembling finger. "Output down to 40%. At this rate, the batteries won't hold for more than 48 hours. "Which means," Tom muttered, "we're screwed." "No," Mira said firmly, though her voice carried the rasp of fatigue. "It means we have work to do. Tomorrow we clean the panels." Leo groaned. "Another EVA after what we just survived." "Yes," Mira snapped, "unless you've figured out how to live without oxygen." That shut him up. Sophia rubbed her eyes. "Even if we clean the panels, our oxygen processor isn't keeping up. We're still at a deficit, if rescue is more than 3 days away." Her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish. Kiko spoke up, her voice quiet but steady. "There's one more option. It's dangerous." Mira turned to her. "I'm listening." Kiko swallowed. "Controlled hypothermia. If we lower our core temperatures just a few degrees, we reduce oxygen consumption. We could extend our survival window." Silence fell. Tom gawked at her. "You're suggesting we half-freeze ourselves to death on purpose." "It's not death," Kiko said quickly. "If done carefully, it slows metabolism. Divers on Earth use the same principle when holding their breath for long periods." Sophia frowned, considering. "Medically, it's possible, but risky. If we go too low, we could trigger arrhythmia. If someone doesn't wake up in time, brain damage, or worse." Mira's eyes narrowed. "Would it buy us enough time?" David did the math in his head, his lips moving silently. Finally, he looked up. "It could cut consumption by 20, maybe 30%. That's the difference between suffocating before rescue and surviving until it arrives." Tom buried his face in his hands. "This is insane. We're building air filters out of underwear, drinking recycled sweat, and now you want to freeze ourselves alive." Mira leaned across the table, her voice fierce. "You got a better idea." Tom said nothing. "Then it's settled," Mira said. "Sophia, write a protocol. We rotate hypothermia shifts. 1 awake, 5 cooled. Tomorrow we start." Above, on the inevitable victory, the alien crew stared at their feeds in shock. "They're actually going to do it," Trill whispered. "They're going to deliberately lower their body temperatures." Zara shook her head slowly, scales shimmering in disbelief. "Every time I think I've seen the limits of human desperation, they move the line." Cora's voice was soft, almost reverent. "Commander, their survival probability rises to 58.3% if this protocol works as intended." Vex Terran leaned forward, antennae twitching. His chest tightened as he watched Dr. Jensen stare down her crew with that same fire in her eyes. "She's gambling with death," he murmured. "Or daring it to blink first," Zara replied. The next day, the experiment began. Sophia adjusted the external cooling system, carefully regulating temperatures. The EVA suits had been repurposed into crude cryopods, tubing rerouted through the habitat's external cooling lines. Tom was first. He lay rigid in his suit as Sophia watched the monitors. His teeth chattered violently. "This is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever agreed to," he muttered. "Relax," Sophia said. "You'll thank me when you're still breathing in 4 days." "Or not at all if I die of hypothermia," Tom shot back, but his voice was weak. His body was already dropping toward 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Hold still, Sophia ordered. Sip this when you wake, slowly. She handed him a warmed nutrient pouch, then glanced at Mira. He's stable for now. Mira nodded. Rotate every 6 hours. No one stays under longer than that. They all agreed, though fear lingered in their eyes. The first cycle worked. Tom survived. Kiko took the next turn, then David. Each emerged weak but alive, their oxygen needs lowered. By the second day, the difference was noticeable. Oxygen levels steadied, if barely. The numbers bought them precious hope. But Mars wasn't finished. Alarms blared suddenly, shrill and unforgiving. David's voice cracked. Pressure drop in Section B, we've got another breach. The crew scrambled, exhaustion forgotten. Mira snatched her helmet, dragging it over her head as the hiss of escaping air grew louder. Where? She barked. Greenhouse connector, Kiko shouted. Mira's heart sank. Not again, not that. Sophia grabbed her arm. If we lose the greenhouse, we lose the plants. Oxygen production drops 40%. Then we don't lose it, Mira snapped, already moving toward the airlock. Tom stumbled after her, pale from his last hypothermia cycle. You can't go out again, not after. I can and I will, Mira cut him off. Seal the inside if I don't make it back, no arguments. She slammed her palm on the airlock controls. The door hissed open. On the inevitable victory, Trill's compound eyes widened in alarm. Another breach, at the greenhouse connector again. Zara's tail lashed. She's going out there after everything, she'll die. Commander Vex Terran stood, claws digging into the railing. His antennae twitched with violent indecision. Cora, he demanded, can we reinforce the polymer matrix without detection? The AI's voice was steady. Possible, but the risk of human discovery rises to 17%. 17, Vex muttered, too high. But as he watched Dr. Jensen step into the storm-wrecked Martian landscape, tools clutched in her shaking hands, he felt his resolve crumble. They don't give up, he whispered, even when death is already at the door. Zara glanced at him. So what do we do, Commander? Vex's eyes never left the screen. We prepare to break every damn protocol the Alliance ever wrote. Dr. Mira Jensen stumbled across the Martian soil, her boots sinking into drifts of red dust. The greenhouse connector loomed ahead, a jagged tear hissing its death into the thin atmosphere. She gritted her teeth and dropped to her knees, pulling out the last of the emergency sealant. Her hands shook, her suit's oxygen readout blinked red, every breath was fire. Come on, she muttered. Not today, Mars. She pressed the sealant into the breach. The polymer spread sluggishly, it wasn't enough. She slapped another cartridge into place, still leaking. Inside her helmet, her breath rasped louder, faster. Her vision blurred. Then suddenly, the soil beneath the connector shifted. Fine red dust fused, compacting unnaturally tight around the joint. The breach slowed, then stopped entirely. The sealant hardened against the reinforced soil, holding. Mira blinked in disbelief. What the? She didn't have time to question it. She staggered back toward the habitat, lungs burning. On the inevitable victory, Trill's voice rang out. Matrix reinforcement successful, breach stabilized. Zara's tail lashed with relief. She'll live. Commander Vex Terran sagged against the railing, his antennae twitching violently. He had crossed the line. Intervention unmistakable, even if the humans never knew. Commander, Cora said softly, you've broken protocol. Vex's lips curled into a grim smile. No, I followed a higher one. Inside the habitat, the team swarmed Mira as she collapsed through the airlock. Sophia tore off her helmet, pressing an oxygen mask to her face. Mira gasped, coughed, then managed a shaky grin. Breach sealed. Tom shook his head, eyes wide. Boss, the way the soil compacted, that wasn't normal. Kiko frowned. It looked like something helped us. Silence fell. Mira looked at them all, then forced herself to laugh, though her heart hammered with unease. Mars is full of surprises. Let's not question it while we're still breathing. The others chuckled weakly, but Mira's eyes lingered on the strange soil formations outside. She didn't believe in miracles. She believed in cause and effect, and something about this didn't add up. 3 days later, the rescue ship appeared in the Martian sky. The battered habitat crew wept as the vessel descended, its thrusters kicking up storms of red dust. Leo cried openly over the comms. We're saved. We're actually saved. David clutched Sophia's arm, his voice breaking. We bought enough time. Tom shook his head in disbelief. I don't know how. We shouldn't be alive. Mira just stared up at the ship, jaw tight, eyes wet. She whispered the words she had repeated every night since the breach. Not today, Mars, not today. Far above, hidden in orbit, the inevitable victory watched the humans embrace their rescuers. Zara's eyes shimmered with something dangerously close to tears. They did it. No, Vex corrected softly. They made it, there's a difference. Trill tilted his head. Commander, should we erase our records of intervention? Vex shook his head. No, archive everything. One day when they join the Alliance, I want this on record. Let history remember how they survived, not because we saved them, but because they refused to die. Months later, Dr. Mira Jensen stood before a packed auditorium on Earth. Images of the Mars disaster played on the massive screen behind her. Breaches, storms, makeshift machines held together with tape and underwear. The universe, she told the young astronauts before her, is trying to kill you. Always, that's not pessimism, that's physics. Space doesn't care if you live or die. She paused, scanning their faces, letting the silence settle. But here's the secret. Humans are hard to kill. We adapt. We improvise. We turn underwear into air filters. We freeze ourselves to stretch oxygen. We drink recycled sweat and call it champagne. We survive because we refuse not to. The auditorium erupted in laughter and cheers, but Mira's eyes flicked upward toward the ceiling, toward the stars. Sometimes, she added softly, I think maybe Mars cut us a break. Maybe the soil formed just right. Maybe we were lucky. She smiled faintly. But if you want to survive out there, don't count on luck. Count on each other. Count on human stubbornness. Count on the fact that we turned desperation into victory. The applause was thunderous. High above Earth, cloaked from human sensors, the inevitable victory drifted silently. Commander Vex Terran watched the broadcast replay, Mira Jensen's face flickering across the screen. You have no idea, he murmured, antennae twitching with something that felt almost like pride. No idea what waits for you beyond your stars, but I think you'll surprise us all. Zara glanced at him. Do you regret helping them? Vex smiled faintly. Regret? No, if the Alliance has a future, it's going to need them in it. The stars stretched endless and patient before them, waiting for the day humanity would finally step onto the galactic stage. And somewhere on Earth, a survivor of Mars still whispered her quiet defiance to the night sky. Not today.